Hello there and welcome to College Russian. This lesson is an introduction to the cases. So when I talk about cases, cases means that in Russian the ending of nouns, adjectives, and any words associated with those nouns change, okay? And right now in Russian, you probably haven't necessarily been introduced to that. You've probably just been seeing words and phrases in their isolated, unadulterated form. So for example, you probably know this word, right? Moskva. Right, Moscow, okay? But what's going to start happening as you learn Russian is you're going to start to see words that you think you know, but for some reason they look different, okay? So over here, Bank Moskvy. Okay, why did Moscow just turn to Moskvy? Okay, over here all of a sudden it's Moskvu. Right here it's Moskvye, and up here it's Moskvoy. And so your head is spinning and you're thinking, okay, what is happening? I thought I knew the word for Moscow and now all of a sudden it's changing on me. Well, that is because in Russian there are 6 cases, meaning that the ends of words change depending on what you're saying about them. So the words in the Moscow in all of these is changing because a different thing is being said about Moscow in each of these. So it's feeling a little bit overwhelming. But in this video, we're going to sort of break it down, what the cases are, and some strategies for how you can learn them. So English doesn't have cases. We use word order and prepositions and articles to sort of get our meanings across. So if English had cases, though, it might kind of look something like this. So in this sentence, my brother gave this little book to my big sister. I put it in this imaginary made-up language with these made-up cases. Okay, so my big brother is in one case. This little, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it because it's just absolutely absurd. But these are all in different cases because something is being said about each of them in a different way. So my big brother is the subject of the sentence. This in blue is the direct object, and this is the indirect object, meaning the person it's being given to. And here we have a preposition, so this would need to have a different case, so on and so forth. So it's completely absurd, but in Russian you actually have those cases, and there are 6. For every word, it's going to have 6 or more different forms that you'll just learn depending on what you're saying about that particular word in that particular context. So I think right now you're probably feeling overwhelmed. How in the world am I even supposed to learn that? Well, the good news is that there are some strategies. Firstly, keep in mind that you really will get them eventually. It took me several years to figure this out. In fact, there was a point in which I just gave up on learning Russian because after I learned about the cases, I was like, never mind, I'll do Spanish or something easy like that. But then, of course, I came back to Russian because I was so madly in love with it. And the thing to remember is that it will take some time, and in the meantime, just talk with Russians, just be excited about the language. Russians will understand you for the most part. They are used to foreigners struggling with the cases. Some people completely speak without them. Russians will be able to get by, okay? So do not let that scare you into not speaking Russian. Just go for it. Be excited about the language. And if it's any consolation, be glad you're not learning Hungarian or Finnish because they have 15 or more cases, and Russian only has 6, so look on the bright side. And lastly, there are strategies for learning these cases, and I'm going to introduce you to a few as we go through this video. Okay, so a little bit more about cases. So you're still trying to grasp this concept. Okay, well, why do they need cases? Well, in English, we rely heavily on a thing called syntax, also known as word order. So what's being done by whom and to whom is all made clear by word order and the help of prepositions. So, for example, look at these 2 sentences. Mom loves Sasha versus Sasha loves mom. So in this sentence here, who's doing the loving? Mom. She's at the beginning of the sentence. We know that. And who's being loved? Sasha. Because it's at the end of the sentence. It goes subject, verb, object. Okay? Well, Russian is a little bit more flexible. So long as you're changing the ends of words according to what's being said about them, a Russian knows exactly what you mean. Okay? So, for example, mama is in its original, also known as nominative form, because it's the subject of the sentence. It's the person doing the action. Любит is the verb. And the thing that's being loved, look, the end of that name changed. Changed to an u. Okay? And that is because it's the direct object, so it's getting what's called the accusative case. Don't memorize any of this right now. I'm just putting it all out there so you can just sort of grasp the concept. Okay? So the end of Sasha is being changed because she's being loved by Mama. So a Russian knows exactly with this sentence who's doing the loving and who's being loved because you change the ends of the words accordingly. Now, get ready to be amazed. This sentence, Sashu любит mama, notice how I changed up the word order, but this means the exact same thing as this English sentence, okay? See, because I maintain the ends of the word. Sashu любит mama. Mama любит Sashu. Okay, and now be officially ready for your head to explode. Sashu mama любит also means mom loves Sasha. All three versions of this mean the same thing. And that is why Russian is such a beautiful, expressive language. And just hang on. Keep hoping, because someday you'll be able to read Russian poetry. And it is precisely this flexibility in the Russian language that makes Russian poetry so powerful and so expressive. Okay, so now I just want to see if you can put your genius cap on and just try and think. So if Sasha is the one doing the loving, she stays in her original form, and Mama is getting to be the one loved, what do you think is going to happen to the end of Mama? Just guess. Who's going to get changed in this sentence? Who's the one getting loved? Mama is the one being loved. So look at this. Sasha любит маму. So see how these are two completely different sentences. Mama любит Sasha means mom loves Sasha. И Sasha любит маму means Sasha loves mom. Again, it's overwhelming you right now, but eventually this will be precisely the thing that you will love about Russian, is you can say things a bazillion different ways, and people will know exactly what you're saying so long as you change the ends of the words appropriately. Okay, so you're probably breathing into a brown paper bag right now, having a panic attack, but that's okay. Because when you learn these cases, there really are strategies to break them down and learn them bit by bit. So obviously the first strategy for learning cases is to not freak out, okay? Again, you do not need to know everything all at once. Just be excited about the language. Go forward. Russians know it's hard. They're very well aware. They have foreigners speaking their language all the time. They know it's hard, okay? So don't let it stop you from speaking Russian. Secondly, the thing you can do in the meantime is just get out there and get speaking. And the way you can do that is just by memorizing set phrases. The ironic thing is you will be saying cases when you say these set phrases. You just won't necessarily be realizing it yet. And this is actually the way kids learn. They just memorize set phrases. They know how to get what they want. But now if you were to ask a little 4-year-old kid what prepositional case is, he would have no idea, because all he's done is just memorize set phrases, and then he goes out and he tries to experiment and say something new. Sometimes he gets it right, sometimes he gets it wrong. You can do the same thing. For right now, just memorize set phrases, okay? However, the other thing you can do is you can work backwards. So once you have those set phrases that you memorize those phrases. So for example, you learn the phrase "Я люблю Москву", "Я люблю Москву". You can walk around Moscow saying that to everybody and they'll think it's so great. Eventually, something's going to click in your brain where you realize, like, oh, Moskva is the original version, but when I say that I love it, the end of it changes to ooh. Okay, huh. And then you can start trying new things with it. This is called inductive learning, meaning you go backwards. You first see all the examples, and then you figure out the rules going backwards. If that doesn't work for you, and you're more of a grammar nerd, then great. Do things like using charts. So for example, here's a chart of the cases. Look how these different words change. So here's masculine gender, feminine gender, neuter gender. And here's how it changes in the different cases. I find that a lot of students like to color coordinate things. So if you go through, you're reading a text and you underline the prepositional case in red and then the accusative case, your brain will start to really separate those cases out from each other and start to make sense of them. And it'll give you a sort of a visual representation. So if you're the kind of person that loves charts, then great. Think of a way to use a chart. If you're not the kind of person that likes charts, then don't use charts. If they overwhelm you, then obviously don't use them. The other step is, and this is especially if you're in a college classroom, is you'll really just be learning one case at a time. Okay, so as far as the in-depth grammar discussion of things, you'll go one case at a time while you're also memorizing set phrases. And then as you come to those phrases, you'll be like, oh, I know that case because I had been saying it in this phrase that I memorized. So it won't be so overwhelming. Okay, so As you start to do that, as you start to break it down into pieces and not freak out, and you just memorize set phrases and you're just observant, just like a child, and you kind of work backwards, you start to see examples of how words change, and then you start to sort of hypothesize why you think it's like that, your brain will gradually start to make sense of all of it. And there will come a time, I promise you, when you'll look at all of these different words, all of these different forms, and know exactly what's happening. Okay? So the main thing to remember about Russian cases is that all nouns, adjectives, and pronouns change depending on what you're saying about them. But don't be scared. There is an entire system out there that you will not need to guess. There will be a system. You can memorize when you need what case. Every time you learn a verb, every time you learn a preposition, memorize what case it needs. And then once you have those case endings memorized, you're good to go in Russian for the most part. Okay, so in the next lesson, we will start with breaking down the cases. And our first case that we're going to talk about is prepositional case, which answers the question, where? And I will see you in the next lesson.